Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy, know y'all with me, let's get it, baby, Rockin' Royal,
Welcome back to another edition of the KSL.com Rockin' Royal Podcast, your podcast for all things BYU and the Big 12 Conference here on Utah's leading news provider, KSL.com. We appreciate the download, appreciate the stream, appreciate however you're consuming us. Give us a like, give us a follow wherever you found us. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, we're on there. Or as always on KSL.com. And that download feed. Also, you can follow us on Instagram at Rock and Roll Pod if you really want to get obsessed with some of our content, some of our other things. We post photos, we post videos. We're out and about, if you will. And we're going to be out and about in Denver this week as BYU men's basketball punched its ticket for the 32nd time to the NCAA men's basketball tournament Sunday evening. The Cougars were drawn into the East Regional, where they will open up in Denver, Colorado at Ball Arena. That's the home of the Denver Nuggets against 11th seeded VCU. It's a program that BYU hasn't played very much in its history, just one all-time meeting between the two teams. That was a BYU win, by the way, back in about 1981 at the University of Kentucky Wildcat Classic in Lexington. So not a whole lot of experience between these two teams, but a little bit more experience with some of the personnel on these teams. In particular, VCU is coached by Ryan Odom. He's heavily linked right now to the Virginia job after Tony Bennett's retirement, and he coached previously at Utah State, one all-time meeting with the Cougars. Never actually beaten BYU yet. Didn't play BYU in his final year with the Aggies before he headed back east to VCU. Some BYU fans may also remember Max Shulga. He was a reserve player on those Aggie teams. Really great story, native of Kiev, Ukraine. Very personable a player going through just a tremendous time during the Russian invasion of his homeland. I'll link a story about that from KSL.com that I did a couple of years ago in the show notes. Just an absolutely tremendous story. But Shulga is currently leading the Rams right now, averaging about 15.1 and about half that in rebounds per game at VCU. They're A10 champions, just like BYU's opponent last year in Duquesne. Kind of a similar team as Duquesne as well. They play a very high-paced, high-pressure style of defense. Not terribly dissimilar from what Ryan Odom ran at Utah State, but on even more of kind of that painkiller addiction, if you will. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep up that type of defense for 40 minutes at altitude in Denver against BYU. But they've also got better shooting, probably, at least going into this game, than Duquesne did. 4 scores in double figures, led, of course, by Max Shulga, like we mentioned. Also, there's a point guard that BYU head coach Kevin Young mentioned was in the portal before he committed to Duquesne, and he was kind of flirting a little bit with BYU, got to know the coaching staff some. So they got to know some of his scouting, some of his tendencies while they were looking at him there as well. But very little experience between these two sides. Between these two programs, and even less experience for Kevin Young. Obviously, you remember he's been in the NBA for 2 decades plus, or the G League, I should say. Brief stint overseas in Ireland as well. So he doesn't have a ton of experience. This is his first March Madness call-up, if you will. But he's leaning on a team that's pretty experienced to this point in the tournament. 3 NCAA tournament bids in the last 5 years, back-to-back, including last year with outgoing coach Mark Pope. There's a reason why Kevin Young, I think, opted to retain the vast majority of this roster. Certainly the core, guys like Trevin Nell, Dallin Hall, Trey Stewart in there, Fus Traore, even some of those guys in sort of different roles. Dawson Baker, I should probably mention in there. Richie Saunders, obviously, the Big 12 most improved player. These guys know what it means to compete in March. Now, the program hasn't won an NCAA tournament game since 2014. And quite frankly, the selection committee didn't do BYU very many favors with this draw. Their number 6 seed is probably about where they should have been. They were in every bracket in bracketmatrix.com, all 111 of them, so it's no surprise that they made the tournament. Rated anywhere between a 5 on the high end and a 7 on the low end. I think I saw 1 or 2 that were on the 8 that were in that 8-9 game. But for the most part, they were 5 to 7. So 6 seed kind of pans out pretty well with the selection committee. But VCU is also you could make an argument for being a little bit underseeded. I mentioned before, A10 champions. They've won 28 games this year. Ryan Odom's 52-20 in 2 seasons with the Rams, including a trip to the NIT quarterfinals a year ago. They went 28-3 overall this year. This is a team that knows how to win and is very proficient at doing it, both on offense and defense, but in particular with that high pressing defense. It's a top 35 team in the top 30 team in the net, number 30 in KenPom compared to BYU at 25 in the net, 24 in KenPom. And they are currently number 45 on the NCAA's total seed line, which coming out to doing the math divided by four regions, that's an average seeding of 11.2. So probably the highest rated 11 seed, I think we can argue, by the committee. And again, with the predictive metrics and everything else, Partorvik also really likes them, the way that they've been playing here down the stretch in particular. This is a really good team, really, really good team. It's going to be tough for BYU, I think, to get past this group. But if they do, I think this BYU team could make a pretty good run. Maybe even this VCU team as well if they get past BYU. But that's obviously not the purpose of this podcast. If BYU gets past VCU, I think the bracket does open up a little bit for them. They'd face the winner of Wisconsin and Montana. Wisconsin probably going to have a lot of trouble with the Big Sky champs. Again, at altitude, Wisconsin not quite used. A little bit lower in altitude than Denver, I'll say. It's still reasonably high up there. They're not quite sea level in Madison, but a little bit lower. So I think that'll be a really fascinating game. I'd probably pick the winner of that BYU VCU game to win that game, quite frankly, despite Wisconsin getting the 3 seed. And so there's an inside track to a Sweet 16, possibly an Elite 8 performance. Duke is the 1 seed in that regional, so the Elite 8 is probably the ceiling for this group, and that's kind of how a lot of national pundits are seeing them. You guys probably heard on the selection show, CBS broadcaster Seth Davis said he really likes BYU to go to the Elite 8. They've got the right amount of offense. They've got just enough defense to figure things out. That a run in the NCAA tournament in Kevin Young's first year isn't out of the question. Rob Doster from the Field of 68, also with a very lengthy, we'll say prologue to this tournament about how BYU is a Sweet 16 or even an Elite 8 team. He really likes them to get out of the regional and head to New Jersey after moving on from Denver. But I think the really important thing is that home site. It's altitude. It's only a couple hundred miles away from Provo. It's about an hour-long flight. I expect plenty of BYU fans to be at Ball Arena for this one. This team has been on a run lately. They've created a lot of buzz in the college basketball world. And I think there's going to be a lot of fans at the arena, which is why I think Kevin Young and his group wanted to try to get to Denver for those early rounds as much as possible. And in fact, that's what Coach Young spoke with us in the media after learning about his seed. So let's get to some post-selection show comments and remarks from BYU head coach Kevin Young and then senior wing Trevin Nell here on the Rock and Royal podcast.
Yeah, just excited regardless of what seed we got. Excited. I've always, like probably most people that are into sports, just been a huge fan of March Madness my whole life as a kid and even an adult. So to be able to be a part of it, kind of surreal, to be honest with you, to kind of hear our name called on the show and be able to just be a part of it. And so, like that we're in Denver. Like the fact that we are, close to home. I think that's certainly where I kind of had my eye. So that was something that I was happy about.
I also wanted to ask you, do you have any familiarity with VCU at all at this point, or are they one of those teams that you didn't have much familiarity with?
Don't know a ton about them, other than the fact, what I've learned here quickly. Good defensive team. They're a team that, tries to turn people over. They do a good job on the offensive glass as well. I know they got a good point guard. He was in the portal. We looked at him a little bit. Good couple good friends of mine coach in that league. John Linehan coached in that league last year. So, there is a certain level of familiarity, within our staff that we'll definitely lean on.
All right, we'll go with Owen, John, Mitch, and then Sean.
Hey, Coach. Been a while since BYU has won a game in the tournament. What kind of gives you the confidence that this team can make a run?
Just the guys we have in our locker room, the confidence that they have, and just how we've been playing. We've been, we feel like we've been one of the best teams in the country, quite frankly, over the last, couple, whatever it is, 30 days where, we've beaten a lot of good basketball teams, and that's the great thing about playing in the Big 12 is, night in, night out, you're playing against some of the best teams in the country. So we feel like we're battle-tested. We feel like we've been through a lot. We have a lot of reference points, and we feel like just the momentum that we've had, we slowed down against Houston. Give them credit. They outplayed us. We did not play a good basketball game in that particular game, but prior to that, the confidence that our guys have been playing with is something that we'll rely on.
All right, John, Mitch, and then Sean.
Kevin, what's the status for Cannon Catchings going into the tournament? Is he available?
He's still day to day. Worked out, today. So we're kind of trying to, move him along. And so we're, like any injury we have here, we try to do what's best for the athlete. And, we're in constant communication with how he's feeling with him and with our training staff, and that's where things lie with him.
Kevin, who are some mentors or maybe individuals you'll turn to maybe for some advice in navigating the NCAA tournament?
That's a good question. I've thought about it. I'm a little bit hesitant, honestly, to try to get too much advice. I think I try really hard not to overthink things. Try to keep things pretty simple, keep a clear mind. That kind of helps me. That's how I sort of operate. So, leaning on guys within our own staff that have been in the tournament, leaning on guys, Trev and Nell, this will be his third time playing in the tournament, so kind of picking the brains of our players. But there's certain coaches, that I'll reach out to, but be really selective with how much I want to talk about, other people's experience and kind of just try not to overthink things. I think you make a mistake when you overthink things.
And then just wanted to ask you, how do you plan to maybe approach practices this week while also keeping your guys rested and ready for a potential tournament run?
I mean, we've had a good rhythm, in terms of how we prepare. I feel like our systems that we have in place at this point are pretty good. So we're going to rely on, how we've done things. I think our guys have really bought into just the rhythm of how we prepare for a game, and that's how we'll continue to operate.
All right, Sean, then Darnell.
Yeah, Coach, you touched on something last week that I thought was pretty interesting, and I kind of wanted to follow it up now that you've got the seed and the selection and you've gone through Selection Sunday. You mentioned how you had always kind of looked forward to the NCAA tournament from afar when you were in the NBA. So what was sort of this, even beyond learning your fate, your destination and all that, what was kind of this day like when you woke up in the morning, kind of waiting around for the selection show? Like, I got to imagine you had a pretty good feeling you'd be in. Obviously with the numbers and the metrics and all that, but what was kind of that feeling like? Was it what you imagined?
Yeah, I think just excitement. It's just, and I don't know, when I made that statement, I don't know if it was just like, hey, I can't wait for Selection Sunday per se, but just I think what makes this such a unique thing, I think most people would say this, is just the one and done nature of it. It's just so unique in that regard. So, as we get closer to game time and just understanding that, that's what you're playing for. You're playing for, everything, on that night. And so that's a really unique thing. I think that's what makes this tournament so fun. But as far as today goes, man, just a lot of anxiousness, wanting to know who we were going to play, where we were going to play them. I can't wait to go start watching film on VCU. I've already got a bunch of reports from our analytics guy kind of painting the picture for me. So I think just a general level of excitement is how I would kind of describe the day.
Kevin, you talked about how you wanted your guys to have a level of focus, a higher level of focus for championship basketball. Do you feel like the Houston game gave them that, or is there anything else that you're planning on doing to get them to recognize?
I think one thing I try to do anyway is just address the elephant in the room. I try to be as honest as I can with our players to try to get ahead of things. And so with that level of focus that I talked about after the Houston game, like I'll continue to beat that drum and just talk about, like I said, after that game, everything just becomes harder when all the chips are in the middle. Everything that you do is harder. Every pass you make is harder to make. Every screen is harder to get through and things like that. And that's the level of focus and competition that I want our guys to be able to wrap their head around. So I don't think it'll be like, hey, we said this after the Houston game, we're good. I think it'll be constant reminders as we prepare, for this game.
All right, we'll go with Matt, and then we'll finish with Jake.
Coach, that Houston team is obviously a great defensive team, and VCU statistically is really good defensively. When you go back and look at that tape from the Houston loss, is there anything that sticks out on how you can attack some of these really aggressive defenses?
First of all, Houston's unique. Like Iowa State was a really good defensive team. Arizona's a really good defensive team. You can go down the list, and so we've been able to, have some big nights against some of the best defensive teams in the country. I think Houston's in kind of a class of their own, honestly. So I'd have to I got to really study how VCU is a good defensive team and figure out what the commonalities are as it relates to the Houston game. I think that probably the number one thing is just the carelessness with the ball. We gotta make sure that we're taking care of that basketball, not being loose with it. That's kind of where we got in a little bit of trouble in that game, and then just continuing trying to make simple plays. That was kind of our message going into that Houston game. We got away from it a little bit, but at the same time, and this is no dig on Houston. Like I said, I think they're the best defensive team in the country, so I'm not trying to duck that by any stretch. However, we missed a lot of wide open shots that we normally make, and give them credit because and some of them they did make us miss with some of their multiple efforts, but some of them, we miss shots. How many times all year have we thrown a ball up there and you get two wedgies in a row? You know what I mean? So I don't know what to say about that. I don't know if that was Houston's defense on those particular ones. But again, they had two games against us where they, stopped us better than anybody in the country. So I think they're really unique, and we look forward to the challenge of scoring against a good VCU defense.
Hey, Coach, you talked about the one-and-done nature of this tournament. What are you thinking lineup-wise, rotation-wise? Are you going to alter that at all?
Like I said, I haven't watched anything on VCU, so I'm like, in general, I'm a let's do what we do at an extremely high level guy. So it'd take a lot for me to get away from what we do, but at the same time, I think one of the things that's made our team unique this year is we've been able to adapt. No matter how teams are trying to play us or who they have out there. That's been the beauty of kind of this 10-man rotation on a given night. Certain matchups are better than others, and styles of play are better than others. Usually that kind of takes place as the game unfolds, as opposed to trying to overthink it and try to get too cute going into a game by changing a bunch of things to start.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Coach. We'll have Trevin Nell up next.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right, Trev.
Yeah, Trevin, experience factor here for you. I think this is your third tournament you've played in. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I was actually telling my wife and a lot of my teammates that this year just feels different. I feel like every guy on the team loves each other. The way we play, the bench energy is great. On the court, everybody's playing for each other. There's no agenda. And Coach said, he said it best. We have a 10-man rotation, which is, super unique. And any given night, some of my teammates can go off. So it's awesome to be able to play for each other. And I'm pumped. It's my last time playing in March Madness, and so it's like a dream come true to be able to, be back at this stage.
I also wanted to ask you, have you watched VCU at all this year? Do you have any familiarity with them?
I know the coach. He's a coach at Utah State. So played against him before. Played against Max Shulga. He's a really good player. But yeah, they're a completely different team. I heard they're really good at defense, so it's going to be a great matchup. But I feel like we're battle tested just with our conference in the Big 12, and I'm excited to play against a really good VCU team.
Trevin, you bring up conference. You're facing another team from the A-10. Seems like a physical defensive style. How motivated are guys like you and Dallin and Foose, guys that experienced last year's defeat, to maybe get in the win column this go around?
Yeah, I mean we're sticking present to this year. We're excited, and we just have different dudes on this team. I feel like we're a whole different team than last year. I feel like we have a lot of blue collar guys, and with Trey and Mo with their athleticism, with Kaba and just our shooting ability. I'm really excited to play against a team like VCU. They're really well talented, really well coached, and so it's going to be a great matchup, and I'm excited for round one.
Trevin, a lot's been made of the fact that VCU is a strong defensive team, but what do you feel like you guys bring to the table in terms of offense that's going to present challenges for their defense?
Yeah, I feel like with this, stretch that we went on, we just played simple basketball. We had a lot of singles. We didn't try to go too crazy. We handled the pressure of opposing defenses really well. And so I think just not turning the ball over, taking our shots and playing, our brand of basketball is really going to help us against this VCU team. But yeah, they're really well coached, like I said, and I think we're a really good offense, really good defensive team. So I'm excited to get this matchup on the way.
Trevin, a lot of people say guard play is really important in tournament time. Have you noticed that in your previous appearances, and how do you think BYU is equipped in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, it just guard play is huge. The front court's huge. Like, your whole team is huge. The bench energy is huge. And so when you go into a tournament that it's a one and done game, the intensity is a little higher. The level of detail is a little more intense. But I think it's just whoever wants it more, and whoever's going to come in with the best energy is going to come out with a win. So I think we're battle tested, like I said, and I'm really excited to be able to play with my teammates that I'm super proud of. We've been through a lot. I know a lot of guys don't know that, but we've been through a lot. We started conference 1-3 and 2-4, and we were able to go on a really remarkable stretch. So super excited and excited to just play with my teammates.
Trevin, I asked Coach Young this. I don't know if you were there at that point, but you've obviously been through this experience about a million times before because of all your years at BYU.
This guy.
But this is Coach, right? But this is Coach Young's first experience with March Madness, the tournament selection Sunday, and a couple of the other coaches. I think Coach Fanning, Coach Voigt, some of them. Did you ever get a chance to kind of know like how they were sort of experiencing it and approaching it, because they're not necessarily used to college basketball and kind of how this time of year works? Like how did they get? Did they ever like say anything to you guys, or where they were like, oh, I'm looking forward to this or that kind of thing?
I mean, it was really unique when we lost to Houston. Coach Young just got up in the locker room and just said, hey, like, we were all pretty down. Like, we just felt like we didn't play our best brand of basketball, especially the first half. We felt like the second half was more us. And then Coach Young came in the locker room and just said, hey, I'm proud of you guys. And, like, he's always wanted to coach in March Madness. He said March Madness is the best time of year. He's always wanted to be a part of it. So it's just super unique, and I think it's an awesome atmosphere, an awesome relationship that kind of everybody has with Coach Young. And so everybody's already pumped. I feel like all the coaches are already starting to watch film. But it's going to be awesome, and I'm excited. I feel like it's great that we don't have to wait to see who we're going to play in a playing game. So it's going to be great to be able to play VCU in Denver and kind of have that on our side.
Hurry up, Mitch.
And just to follow up with that, Trevin, on 6th seed in Denver, what was the collective reaction from the guys when you were watching in the annex, and then maybe just what was going on at the selection show party for you guys today?
Yeah, well, we obviously wanted Denver just because it's a little closer to home. We felt like the elevation is kind of on our side a little bit, and we really want Cougar fans to really enjoy this time. And we think with Denver being pretty close that we're gonna have a really good show with the crowd. And so that's all I say. I think Cougar fans, get ready. I think it's gonna be a crazy atmosphere. It's gonna be awesome play in the Nuggets Arena. So I'm excited for that. And then I think we were all a little surprised with our name popping up first But again, everybody's excited. My teammates are excited, and we're just can't wait to get on a plane and head out to Denver.
Know you with me.
All right, guys, any more questions for Trevin?
Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy.
All right, thanks.
Know you with me.
You guys.
Let's get it, baby.